Hello and welcome to Mountain Valley Today. We're certainly glad you tuned in today. And my guest is John Dersham. He's Director of Tourism for DeKalb County. So, John, may I call you John?
Absolutely.
We're certainly glad that you're with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got involved with tourism?
Okay. Well, I worked for Eastman Kodak for 30 years in management, and they moved me around the country courtesy of their career path.
Okay.
So back in those days when Kodak had 160,000 employees, if you wanted to get ahead, it typically involved a move.
Travel.
So the company was nice enough to move us every few years. I was in the Northeast, the Midwest, the Southeast, and so I really got to see a lot of the country that way. But my job in tourism,
Okay.
I actually became a tourist to DeKalb County.
Really?
My wife and I, my last Kodak job was in Hoover, Alabama, and I managed the Southeast for Kodak. And they started, declining a little
Right.
bit as digital started becoming more popular, and they started closing our facility. They closed my office in Birmingham area, and by that time my kids were grown and they had moved away, and my wife and I started coming up here as visitors,
Okay.
as tourists.
In DeKalb County, did you hear that?
And
In
we
DeKalb County.
absolutely fell in love with the area. So we started coming really to Mentone and Fort Payne and all through the county on the weekends. Finally, we bought some land and put a camper up here.
Well, how
So
about
we came
that?
every weekend. We were just lonely for the kids. They were gone by then, empty nesters. So we were coming up here. So when I applied, after I was still with Kodak when I moved here, and finally they just closed my department completely. And we were living up here, and we decided, I saw an ad in the paper. It was in the Chattanooga paper, it was in the Fort Payne paper, this job in tourism. And I thought, well, that really sounds interesting. So I applied, but there was a blind email address, info@tour-DeKalb. So I didn't know who I was talking to.
Right.
And there was nothing on my resume that fit the description they were asking for, which was you had to have 5 years in tourism.
In tourism.
And I thought, well, you know what? The job at Kodak, all that film stuff, all the thousands and thousands of rolls of film we were processing every day, most of them were tourist pictures.
Yeah.
So I kind of related that industry with it. And I applied multiple times, and finally I asked Steve Eberhard down at the bank, I said, do you know anybody that's on the tourism board here so I can get a name? And he found a name, and I called him and started telling him, Roy Jones with Sequoia Caverns was our president, and I was telling him why, what's it take to get an interview? And he said, well, send the application directly to me. And a few months went by, I was about ready to take another job, and he called and says, are you interested in interviewing? I said, absolutely. Got there the next day, and our entire board was there.
Oh, man.
So they made me an offer, and it was really great. But the thing they liked most was, instead of growing up here my entire life, I handpicked this as the place to move to because I had become a tourist in DeKalb County.
That is amazing.
Yes.
That's a great story. Oftentimes when we've been maybe to the Smoky Mountains, to Gatlinburg or somewhere, I'm thinking, why are we going to Gatlinburg? We have the beauty right here in our own backyard. And just this past weekend, I was with some family. They were talking about some people over in the Huntsville area who were talking to a friend who actually grew up in Henniger, Alabama, and they had found a wonderful spot, Mentone, Alabama.
Right.
They were so excited about the Wildflower Cafe and other things that are out at Mentone, and they come quite often. And we are truly in part of the country that is beautiful, and me and a lot of people who are close to me, we take it for granted.
Right.
But you didn't take it for granted.
Exactly.
You chose it. You came here, so we're really excited to have you. Now, I think we were talking a little bit about, and you were going to start telling us about the economic impact
Right.
of tourism in DeKalb County. So
Right.
I'll turn that part over to you.
Well, let me start by something you said about Gatlinburg. Every day, my office is in the information center next to the interstate down here, exit 218, straight down Highway 35. Every day, people come in and say, we now come to DeKalb County. We love this area. We used to always go to Gatlinburg when the kids were young. There's the key. Because the kids had more physical activities, like, they had the miniature golf and they had the go-karts and they had a whole bunch of wild things for them to do. But as the people aged a little bit and the kids grew up, they wanted the scenic value, which we have, but they wanted a little bit quieter, more relaxed environment, less traffic. And people, it's amazing. So one of our largest demographics in these numbers I'm going to tell you are actually the baby boomers.
Okay.
Now, our challenge in the future is to attract the millennials and the X generation.
Yes.
And they're very much into, kayaking, hiking, biking, and things like that. So we're trying to have more of that offered in the county.
Right.
And I think we'll be very successful at that as if baby boomers age out a little bit.
So we're talking about possibly working on companies who would offer those services where our waterways are.
Exactly. Like One World Adventure has some of those services now, so does True Adventure Sports.
Okay.
Where they're actually offering the customer adventure activities.
Okay.
And they're great, and they're starting to fill that niche. We're talking about an expansion of the trail system, the hiking, biking trail system. Mountain biking is really a big thing
It is.
now. And people in that demographic, they have the money. And they are very conscientious about keeping their paths clean and the trails clean, and they even do a lot of their own maintenance. But what's exciting are the numbers. And this is exciting not just for the United States, but actually for the state of Alabama. And I have a couple things I brought with me today, because every year, actually, by the end of April, the last year's numbers come out.
Right.
So we compiled all these numbers, and Alabama, the state of Alabama, $12.6 billion were spent last year by tourists in Alabama.
That is phenomenal.
In the state of Alabama. Now, I lived around the country, and, I handpicked this area. But many places you travel, especially in the Northeast where I came from, people really are not that familiar with Alabama. And if they are, sometimes they have a negative attitude about typically things that happened in the past. But Alabama is now the 14th largest tourism economy in the United States.
Really?
Including the District of Columbia. So 51 locations, Alabama is now 14th. And that's up from 22 just 5 years ago.
Well, we're almost in the top 10.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
That
but
is.
if you think about who is ahead of us, it's the obvious ones. Places like Florida for Orlando, Nevada because of Las Vegas, and California's ahead, New York State's ahead. But we're ahead of North Carolina. And you always think, well, North Carolina's a great tourism state.
Yeah, they have the mountains and the ocean just like we do.
Right. So we're ahead a lot of the states that you would think. Now, New England, when I was growing up, New England, everybody wanted to go to New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. And that was heavy tourism. Now they're falling way behind the Southeast and the southeastern states. Georgia is a little bit ahead of us. And Texas is ahead of us. Everybody else in the Southeast we're ahead of. So we're doing absolutely fantastic. And with that, DeKalb County is doing equally well. We're up 12.9% year to date.
Wow.
So that's tremendous growth. We were up 5.5% last year. But you see the boom. And nationally, we're having record-setting numbers this summer. And it really shows. I mean, if you travel this summer, you're going to see a lot of traffic. The gas prices are helping. And there's just a lot of activity going on. The economy is better in most locations than it's been, overall, especially since the Great Recession. So just in DeKalb County, and I'm going to show this, you can probably see it. This is our growth line. This is the amount of expenditures spent by tourists in Alabama. Now, in DeKalb. To be a tourist in DeKalb County, you cannot live in DeKalb County.
Gotcha.
So the mark of a tourist is somebody that is earning their money elsewhere and bringing it into our economy and spending it. So this line shows our growth over a 16-year period. Now you'll see two blips. That's 9/11. You remember how the
Yes.
economy went flat in
Yes.
9/11? Okay, the Great Recession, we actually had a dip one year. But overall, all of these years, we've had a constant growth trend here. And now up to $80 million
In DeKalb County.
spent just in DeKalb County.
$80 million.
That means the people coming over here to the Super 8 hotel, because remember, this has to start with an overnight stay.
Mhm.
So the measurement to be in this book, the $80 million, for them to be a tourist, they can't stop at our exit 218 and buy gas and eat at Cracker Barrel and leave. The city gets the tax revenue for their purchases, but that's not tourism. To
Okay.
be here, to be part of that $80 million, you have to have spent the night somewhere in the county.
Okay.
A cabin, a B&B, a hotel, motel, or a campground.
Wow.
And
That's
it's
amazing.
just amazing because this year is just out of this world. So we've more than doubled the dollars worth of expenditures by tourists in the 15-year period.
Well, numbers don't lie. You can always talk to an accountant. They say the numbers, there's no fudging the numbers. And so $80 million
Right.
are spent in DeKalb County just by tourism, which is a phenomenal thing.
Well, the interesting thing about that is, well, you can say somewhere along here, new hotels were built.
Mhm.
Now, we happen to know the date all the hotels open. So I can look on this chart and I can say, well, part of this blip, part of this growth is because of the new hotel. Because see, these numbers emanate from lodging tax.
Okay.
So those are dollars. So we track whether the hotel's charging more this year than last year, or if there's more rooms available. But in the last 4 years, we're apples to apples.
Okay.
The prices for a night stay in most of our hotels is the same as it was basically the last 4 years. And there's no new rooms that have been added. So that means our growth of 12.9% this year to date is a direct comparison with where we were last year at the same time.
Wow.
So
that's
it's
amazing.
exciting, but we got so many wonderful things. I mean, we've got the Agri Center here in
Mhm.
Rainsville. That's constantly bringing in events almost every weekend. It's filling the hotels and campgrounds, and a lot of their events are 3-day
Yes,
events. So they're
yes.
staying overnight. And we've got DeSoto State Park and Little River Canyon, and they've won a number of awards, and they've also gotten a lot of publicity from CNN and Forbes and different ones that are talking about, the best place to swim in the summertime in a national property. And so you can't buy advertising
Like that.
like that, because if you were to contract with CNN to buy an ad, it'd be very pricey. But when they write about you,
Yeah.
and you score in the top 10 of anything, that's international. And the numbers, in fact, I just got them today, the numbers at the national park are up 9.5% for the year, just in that one facility.
Wow.
Now, when they come there, as you know, at Little River Canyon, you're not buying anything. You can
Yeah.
go to the gift store, spend your money, but you're not paying to get in. So they're going other places to eat. They're going to DeSoto State Park while they're here. They're coming to Rainsville and on Sand Mountain to Secondhand Shop, which is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
All these antique stores and secondhand stores are extremely popular to travelers. They're looking for agri events. They like molasses and somebody who makes honey. So they like the farmers markets and things
Okay.
like that. So once we can get them to come here for any reason, doesn't really matter what it is. If they're coming to make DeKalb a visit for the weekend or a week, all we have to do is supply them enough activities. They're going to spend their money. So a family of 4 will spend $436 a day in
Wow.
DeKalb County, including their hotel and their food, gas, and other miscellaneous shopping and attractions. So we're the largest non-agricultural business in the state and in DeKalb County.
That is phenomenal.
So agriculture is always number one everywhere.
Yes,
Because
yes.
it includes forestry too.
So all the things you and I are taking for granted, there are people coming and staying here and paying their hard-earned dollars to come and visit and wanting to come back quite often.
That's another good point. We have the highest return rate for our visitors, second to the beach. So there's two things. We are a leisure tourism county. We don't have a great number of people coming here that say they're here conducting business. Now, we have some. But if you think about it, Huntsville, Birmingham, Mobile, their dollars are way, way higher than ours, but it's mostly business travelers. They're conducting business. So when people come to DeKalb, they say, I'm here on vacation. I'm here for leisure tourism. Same way when they go to the beach in Alabama. So we're the second highest for both return customers, and we're the second highest for leisure customers. So if you look at just now our numbers, you got to set this, it's a percentage of people. So the percentage of people that say they're here for leisure travel is second only to the beach.
Okay.
And that's exciting because it means, again, they're picking our destination as a place to go.
What do you think is something in the future that we in our local area should be aiming for to continue the growth of people coming here and wanting to come here and keep them coming back for more and more?
I think if you look at the demographics of this, and we do a lot of gender-related activities. When I go to seminars and stuff, we talk about generational marketing. The people my age, baby boomers, gradually start aging out of the heavy travel. So we know we have the baby boomers, and they're going to continue for another 20 years. But the X generation and the millennials are the people we need to appeal to, and we need to do things a little differently than our competitors do. So we're ideal for agritourism, which is anything related to the agricultural industry, to make attractions out of it. Farmers market's one of them, that's the most notable. But there's other things. You can have individual farmers that are doing things, demonstrations and things, and the Auburn Extension Service, the County Cooperative Service is involved and engaged in stuff like that as well. Also, ecotourism, which is based on things like kayaking, hiking, biking, swimming, mountain climbing, rock climbing, rappelling, things like that. And those are critical to the next generation, as is food.
Right.
The millennials especially, millennials are buying fewer houses, and they're tending to want to use their money for travel.
Okay.
And they like to eat well. They really
Good
like
restaurants.
They really like to eat well, so that's important we do that. Fort Payne now has a Main Street program.
Right.
Which is very important, because what happens is, as Main Street develops its program, the kinds of businesses that develop in the downtown areas that are rebuilding are typically very attractive to visitors, because it's not a chain.
Right.
You know, they can go to Walmart or the other stores anywhere, any time, but they want to go boutique shop, they want restaurants, they want galleries, they want music, and they want to learn a little bit about your history, so museums.
And we do have a lot of history in our
really
area.
do.
We just take it for granted. So do you think that there is plan for, I mean, there's always industry coming in, but do you think there are plans for more restaurants, more hotels, more activities that are on the plans for people you're talking with, or you see more of that developing?
I think the way the restaurants and hotels work, they have a business model that, for example, the hotels, once you hit an occupancy of about 70%, they can track. They know exactly what our area, what the occupancy is. Once it hits about 70%, they're ready to build another hotel.
Well, I just heard that one of the hotels in Fort Payne was about to expand and build 28 more rooms. And I'm thinking, if they're expanding one of the hotels in Fort Payne, then there's a need for more lodging.
There is. In fact, this summer especially, and there's several weekends of the year that you can't get a room, hardly anywhere. World's Longest Yard Sale, which is upcoming August 4th through 7th, fills all the lodging. So does Alabama Fan Appreciation Weekend. And some of the weekends associated with the camps up on the mountains where the parents are coming in and out.
And that's one thing that we don't talk about very much, but those camps up there they're filled up all summer.
They are. And they solicit directly to schools and church groups and things like that. So they don't necessarily go through tourism to get their visitors. But when those parents come and bring those kids, they're bringing them one weekend, spending the night. They're coming to get them a week later or 2 weeks later. And that whole trip becomes
An event.
2 vacations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an event.
And they're spending a lot of money with us. And that goes on year after year after year after year. So very critical to our area. Now, Sand Mountain, which is equally beautiful, people ask me sometimes, they say, well, why isn't there as much focus on tourism on Sand Mountain? And it isn't that there is not. The difference is the public lands
Yeah.
are primarily on Lookout Mountain with the state park and national park, wildlife management area. But I'm extremely glad DeKalb Fishing Lake has opened back up. In fact, there was a great ceremony out there just a few weeks ago, and it's a beautiful lake, and fishing is a big, big deal.
That's
Now,
good.
we had Gunnersville in our area. See, that's like a gold mine.
Well, I know that they have a lot of fishing tournaments even over in Scottsboro, and
Right.
the hotel
Yes.
come over into DeKalb County as well,
They
Fort
do.
Payne and in Rainsville. But we were talking earlier about some of the upcoming events that we've got coming in our area, and why don't we share some of those that are coming up, and maybe people who, for some reason, didn't catch the local news or the newspaper
Right.
can understand, or maybe there's a place they can go to look for upcoming events.
There is, and that's the one. We keep, the DeKalb Tourism keeps an ongoing calendar of events, year-round. Every day it's updated, anything we hear is new. So to qualify to be an event for us, it has to be publicly attended.
Okay.
So it can't be somebody's private party. We're not going to promote that. So if you want to advertise on our marquee, it just needs to be a public event. And we also put it online in our calendar events, which is www.tourdecalb.com. So you can go there at any point, click on the calendar events tabs, and you'll see everything. And there'll be a lot of things on there that you had no idea are going on, because there's a deep catalog of things happening. And to give you an example of that, sometimes people will say, oh, especially teenagers, you know how they are, there's just nothing to do here.
Yeah, I hear
So
that.
I send them to our calendar events. Okay, here on this day, every day of the year. But on the weekends, there may be 10 or 12 events on a Saturday and a Sunday that can be publicly attended. So there's
So
plenty
that's
to
at
do.
www.tourdecalb.com.
Right,
Now,
exactly.
is there a Facebook page?
There is.
Okay.
It's just called Lookout. There's 2 of them. Lookout Mountain, Alabama. If you plug that in, we kind of brand ourselves as Lookout Mountain, and we did that because we had a branding company one time. Part of branding is some name familiarity, and Lookout Mountain happens to be well known nationally now. The downside is people think we're Chattanooga sometimes, so we have to define ourselves constantly. But the world's longest yard sale is coming up August 4th through 7th, and that's a biggie.
Yes.
Now,
People from all over come to that.
all over the world. In fact, a couple years ago, that one of the girls that was on one of this, I can't think of the name of that sitcom one time, but she lived in California, and she called. She wanted to know if this yard sale was as big a deal as I thought, so I explained it to her, and I thought she was going to offer some free advertising, but I think she was looking for a paid trip.
Oh, okay.
You might want to edit that out. Especially since I couldn't remember her name. But we've got things like Colorfest coming up in Mentone. They have the Rhododendron Festival in the spring, and then Colorfest in the fall. That has a high visitation content. But Eider Mule Days coming up on Labor Day. That's a biggie. That's
Yes.
always a very, very well-attended event, and to me, it's just fun. We go every year, take the family, see all the animals and antique cars,
And Collinsville Trade Day this every Saturday.
absolutely. And believe it or not, that one is a mainstay. It's big all the time, year-round, and if you walk around, and I do sometimes, I walk around, I ask people where they're from. It's amazing, the Atlanta population, Birmingham, Huntsville, that heard about Trade Day and come on a regular basis.
That's neat. That's
So
neat.
we really have a lot of fun things going on, and again, visit that calendar event. Or if you want to stop at our information center, we have hard copy of all of these that we're passing out, and we do them on a monthly and quarterly basis.
Well, I know that I drive by quite often, and I see the marquee, and when I see something scroll, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was going on,
Right.
or I forgot about that. And maybe if some of us would like the Facebook page, it would pop up on our feed.
It will.
And we would see it a little more often. But we do appreciate you promoting DeKalb County, and I really think it's so interesting that you chose DeKalb County to come to as a visiting destination spot. And more importantly, you decided to make this your home and to be a part of the community.
I love it.
And so it's really a unique, the path sometimes that we all follow in life
It is.
to get our dream job. And so remember that you can go to their website. Is there a phone number that they might want to call, or how
Yeah.
can they get in touch with someone if they're...
256-845-3957.
Okay. And so you're welcome to call that number, go online and look at their site, like their site on Facebook. And I know there are tons of things going on in our area, as he's told us about, but also upcoming things when your teenager says there's nothing to do.
Right.
You can direct them to something they might want to be a part of. And I think it's very important that the dollars follow these individuals. 80 million?
80 million.
80
just in
million.
DeKalb County.
And so that is a tremendous amount of money being brought into our local economy. And so we're very thankful for that. We appreciate the work that you do.
Okay,
Now, how
thank
many
you.
are in your staff there that you work out of that office?
There are 4 of us.
And I guess
Myself and 3 exceptionally wonderful ladies that really...
that keep you in line.
They do keep me in line, and they really know their stuff. So when customers come in, people come in from all around the world, actually. Get a lot of international visitors, too. They can really give them the information.
And don't forget, if you have an event that you'd like for them to publicize, just remember it has to be a public event, and I'm sure they'd love to put it on their calendar and promote it. You never know who may come.
And on our website, there's an email link, so you can
Okay.
contact us with that information.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you being with us
Well,
today.
thank
It's
you
been
so
nice
much.
to get to know you, and I'm
Absolutely.
glad
Pleasure.
your path came to DeKalb County.
Love it. Thank you.
And we're certainly glad that you've joined us today on Mountain Valley Today. Don't forget, you can watch any of our episodes on mountainvalleynewspaper.com. Also, we're on Farmers Telephone TV Channel 6 and WFPA 1400 in Fort Payne. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next time.